Blake, are you the kind of guy that complains about the sound being too loud in church or not loud enough?
I plead the fifth here, as my answer would make me enemies for sure.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is as loud as a subwoofer, but still sensitive to loud noises. And I'm here with my boss, who has two full-line arrays in his living room for his TV to watch Patrick Mahomes on football Sunday nights, Toby Walters.
You've given me so many things to digest here. Your understanding of a subwoofer seems to be greatly lacking.
Is it not loud? Isn't it like a speaker?
Well, sure. You can make a sub very loud, but it's never going to hurt your ears necessarily. It's going to shake the room.
I shake the room.
Do you remember when we were at New Life Church in Colorado Springs?
How could I forget such a fun trip?
Out in the lobby, and then we heard the whole building shake.
Yes.
Like that were the subs cranking.
The little ladies working the front desk looked very annoyed at us.
And I was like, legit, when we walked in there, and so Dave and their front of house guy were, cranking the system just to feel it. And I'm thinking, like, are the rafters going to come down on this building?
Oh, I was saying, like, I was asking God to save me one more time. You know how we've all been saved about 1,000 times, because I was like, I'm dying right here, right now.
So I love it loud, and I guess that's all relative. Like, at some point, it gets too loud, and then it just hurts. But Blake, I don't know if you know this, but like it can be louder and sound better and feel better if it's mixed properly.
Oh, I figured that out when we went to MXU's opening of HQ. That was truly magical. Like that sound that they displayed, it's the loudest I've ever experienced music, and it didn't hurt my ears. That was incredible.
And so I don't know, I know theoretically that there are dB meters, and then there's like A-weighted and C-weighted. Like, I don't even know what that all means. It's a bit over my head. But I know so I go to Church of the City on Sunday mornings now, and they run it at a decent volume. Like, I really enjoy most Sundays, but I could use it just a touch louder.
Toby likes his church services really loud, sitting next to the governor.
Obviously. Actually, I sit behind him to protect him, And so we had this youth night. My daughter's in middle school now. Blake, you serve in middle school ministry at Fellowship. And so for this youth night, they invited all the parents to come and experience, what it's like on Wednesday nights for their kids. And so I've been in youth ministry like back in the day. So I was like, I generally know what to expect. There's going to be like a goofy game and then some music. So hundreds of parents came to this night. And Hundreds.
Dear goodness.
I know. So the same guy, Josh Fisher, was mixing on Wednesday night. And Josh used to be drummer for Bethel and runs front of house oftentimes on Sunday mornings. And his mix is great. So on this Wednesday night, he was mixing as well. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, I know what to expect. Well, on youth night, they ran it like a good 10 dB louder. And it was glorious. And it was like a concert in there, Blake. Like, if Sunday morning is, like, nice and friendly, this one was, like, aggressive and punch you in the face kind of sound.
And how did the other parents react?
I think most of them were digging it. Were
they throwing it back, doing they're like, we're at a concert, doing disco moves back in their youth?
We're doing, like, the hand motions to the youth songs and stuff.
Oh, my gosh.
But, there's literally 1,000 kids in the worship center, and they are, like, it's bumping, and they're jumping around. There's, like, it's not a conga line, but like lines of kids like running through the aisles and stuff. It's straight up chaos, but it's awesome.
Recently we were playing the silly game, like you say, and it was chaos. People are wearing Santa outfits. People are throwing snowballs, like these puffballs. And I looked at my co-leader and I said, "This game is stupid and hilarious." That's pretty much the tagline for youth ministry. It's stupid and hilarious.
Right. Like, it kind of felt like a Pentecostal service in there, but
more
like chaos.
Let's not get in trouble now.
No, I love Pentecostal services. Like, I've been to some great churches, like T.D. Jakes Church in Dallas. Like, I've been to a service, and the energy in there, the passion in there
Is that where you pass out
amazing.
mid-service?
No, that's a little bit different world.
'Cause-
Like that's going into a little bit.
So my best friend Jeremy, his older sister went to one of those, and they were like going down the line, making every person pass out and hitting them with the Bible. And they hit Lauren in the head of the Bible, and she just goes, "Ow!" And they go, "Repent of your sin," because she didn't like pass out.
So, real quick on that, do you know the name Benny Hinn? So he's a very famous, preacher in that world of the fall down and slain in the spirit. So this was a Babylon Bee recently, and it was one of their ones they called Not the Bee because it's a true story. They just reshare it. So it's not, satirized at all. So Benny Hinn is preaching, and he literally gets served with a lawsuit mid-sermon.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, someone I would like to serve a lawsuit to in the middle of a youth service? The production operations team lead at Christ in Youth, Kevin Behnke. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Well, what a great intro.
Kevin, have you ever been served? You ever been served papers?
I have not been served papers, but I've been to court several times.
All right, then.
There's some stories to get out there.
So,
there you go.
Have you ever been slain in the spirit?
No, not been slain in the spirit,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
I have not either.
repent in your sins, guys. I get slain every night.
I know,
we
need to get better.
I have been anointed
That's
with
right.
oil, and I really enjoyed that experience.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. For me, there was nothing like mystical about it. It was a pastor praying over me, taking oil and putting it on my forehead. And it just felt like I'm just being prayed for. And it felt wonderful.
It's really hard for me, Kevin, to imagine Toby in like a reverent setting of that. So that's adorable and funny.
Yeah, kneeling down and letting it happen.
Yeah. like mostly
I
Blake
grew
and
up
I
in a
are
Lutheran church.
just burp and fart jokes is Blake and I. So to be reverent is really hard for us.
I grew up around a Lutheran church. My extended family still goes to Lutheran church. So I know every single time we go to Lutheran church, it's always like, okay, we got a kneel, we got a straight laced. So,
And are they like
actually that?
Are they like, Kevin, we're going to anoint your whole beard, so just dip your whole beard into this bowl?
Well, yeah, I view it as free beard oil. So it's like, come on, bring it on.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, let's do his 5 truths and a lie here. Let's see if we can get him. Also, Kevin, you're the MVP because you let us reschedule. So I got to say, thank you very much. We were dying that day. All right. Number 1, I worked on a show called The Butter Show.
I need to watch that show.
I had a friend recently say, if we started a cult, our religion should be cats and butter.
Cats are the worst. Butter's the best.
I'm not going to argue on this. Number 2, I was a paid tree climber. This guy sounds like a youth guy, like working with Christ in Youth.
Yeah, I would assume by tree climber, like he worked for a tree trimming company and he was the one who'd have to climb up and like.
Oh, no, I assume the same, but
Yeah.
like youth workers have this eclectic background.
Yeah, that's true.
Number 3, I currently own 4 trucks. This looks like a man who owns 5 trucks. I lost count, whatever. Last time
Counting's hard.
I was clean shaven was 12 years ago. I was almost going to read that as 12 years old.
I mean, by the size of that beard,
I buy it.
that's legit.
Number 5, my favorite free time activity is to wet a line.
Fishing, man. Come on.
Okay.
Oh,
Wet
man,
that
I was
line.
like, I was going to like Narcos
don't
world,
say it.
like
Okay.
lines of cocaine.
Okay. Wow.
And I was like, what is
Well,
wet a
that
line?
took a
I know.
turn.
That would be really
Love
funny
it.
if he casually admitted. Oh my gosh.
Admitted
to doing that.
Well, that'd be my next court case.
Yes. Number 6, I'm hooked on doing lines of coke. I mean, I'm a hooked on phonics graduate.
Yeah.
I
good one.
so Kevin, when I saw this outline came through, I asked Blake, like, have you ever heard of Hooked on Phonics?
And I was like, yeah, I went to an old elementary school. So like, I think I got a 70s education in the early, 90s.
Based on your knowledge of pop culture, I would say you are correct.
Well, all right. So I got to tell you, Kevin, this is really good. I don't feel strongly about any of them. So I'm just going to dive in
Good.
as fast as I can.
That was my goal.
I mean, he looks like a man's man. Like you and I are just a couple little like silly boys.
We're what a
And,
man's man eats for breakfast.
Yeah, this guy, tree climber, trucks, fishing.
I'm going to say last time I was clean shaven was 12 years ago is the lie because I'm going to be like shocked that he actually grew that beard in like 6 years or
Dang
something.
it, why did I let you choose first? Because I was going to choose
started
that.
to do that recently now.
I'm going to say that his lie is that his favorite free time activity is to wet a line because I've fished once in my life, and I was like, it's just not my thing. So
It's not your thing, but I bet it's Kevin's. All right, Kevin, tell us your lie.
That was correct. My favorite free time activity is to not wet a line. I do not fish regularly.
Oh, Blake, how's that hooked on phonics education working out for you, buddy?
I kind of feel like a fish with a hook in its mouth after getting suckered into that. All right. So
Man, I nailed it there. I was really trying to get it because I felt like when you look at me face value, that's a pretty good one that people assume like, oh yeah, he fishes. And based on the other qualifiers in my list, it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely falls right in line. So
well, and you even use the jargon hooked on a.
That's right. That was the goal.
Yeah, that we don't even know.
Kevin, that might be the best thought out lie someone has duped us with.
So besides recreational drug use, what is your favorite free time activity?
Oh man, I just love hanging out with people. I love just being in community with people. So yeah, I think it's hanging out, it's doing things. I love working with my hands, building things. So to this morning, the reason why I was running a little bit late this morning was I was actually tending to bees. So I have beehives and we own a farm. So yeah, that's what it is.
All of this and he doesn't fish, I call BS. He's lying about that lie.
Blake, do you remember that I had bees in my eaves a few years back?
What?
Like we had a colony of bees in the eaves above our front door, and it turns out a neighbor, just like you, was a beekeeper. So he was like, "Don't call anyone. I'll be right there." And then he spent the next 2 days like moving that colony to his backyard.
He was like, "Just let it be. Call me. I'll get it. You'll see." All right,
so he was shaking in the knees
as Kevin's climbing up trees. So how old were you when you were doing that?
Can we stop rhyming, please?
Okay.
Oh, I got to sneeze.
All right, tell us about climbing trees.
All right, there we go. Yeah, climbing trees. So I was 19. I actually just came back from doing my work in California as a technical director for a church plant. And I was like, I need something to fill the time until I do my next thing. So I was literally scrolling through Craigslist because it was hot then, we didn't have Facebook Marketplace at the time. And this guy was like, wanted experienced tree climber. I was like, I can climb trees. I own a chainsaw. And so I didn't know that it required a chainsaw at first when I replied to the ad, but then when they called me, it's like, oh yeah, we got chainsaws, you got to climb trees. So I did high risk tree removal, whether it be climbing with spurs on up trees or like in booms. And that was just like kind of a weird summer job that I did.
Did you collect beehives every time you went to one of these trees?
No beehives. It was a lawn care company that like literally started to do tree work, and they're like, well, we're just trying to grow this business. And it was like they hired some real schmucks, me being one of them. So
they're trying to grow the business by killing trees.
Yeah, right.
Blake, I feel like
grow the business by killing trees.
Already, I mean, what are we, 10 minutes in? I feel like you and I need to just turn in our man cards here.
Yeah, I mean, I had it for a second when I was polishing the floors the other day, and Chris gave it to me, but...
So, embarrassing confession, my father-in-law gave me a chainsaw, and he taught me how to use it, and it's a gas-powered one, and I used it once, and it scared the heck out of me, and but I own 2 acres of land, so, like, sometimes there are trees that need to be cut, so I straight up went and bought a battery-powered chainsaw, because that was much more my speed.
Or call Dave. Call Dave Rodiger. He'll help you out.
Yeah, that guy's from Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, I've had good success cutting like people's limbs off with chainsaws, but never actually tree limbs.
This is not a Halloween episode.
So I kind of collect chainsaws and tools and things as part of my persona, but I'm the guy that people call when they want to borrow a chainsaw. And then, or they come to me and brag like, oh man, I just cut down this tree, whatever. And then it's like, well, I could have given you like one of my chainsaws. And they always get caught up on the fact that I own more than one chainsaw. It's like, who doesn't own more than one chainsaw, right?
Well, just make sure none of those chainsaws are returned to you with blood on them, as that would be an easy cover up. So tell us about working on the Butter Show. What the heck is that?
Yeah. So we do rental. So obviously CIY does our own events. So we do youth events all across the nation, preteen through graduated seniors of high school. And then we do missions abroad as well. But as a way to kind of supplement what we do, we have a full warehouse and production staff, and we have a lot of gear that just sits for 9 months out of the year. So we actually booked a show last year because we did a film shoot where we had LED wall and we shot in front of it, and it was really cool. And then the DP that was on that show actually did contract work for a company out of Colorado. And so he called us up and he's like, "Hey man, do you guys think like in 2-3 weeks you could be in Boulder with some LED wall? We want to shoot we're going to shoot this commercial thing, and we just need this. This is what we need. Now that I've seen it, I want it." And so, and there's budget for it on this shoot. And so it's like, okay, whatever. What's it for? So it's for Land of Lakes, the ultimate butter company. So they were doing like a whole marketing campaign and rebranding. So it forever is called the Butter Show in our world. So there was actually surprisingly very little butter or dairy products in general on set. So I was kind of upset because the joke also was we were going to get paid in butter. So at the end of the show, we just put this on your truck. It's butter. Take it back, spread it out amongst your staff. So
just like, I can't believe it's not enough butter on this set.
Right. Well, yeah, but it was Land of
Butter
Lakes.
Show. Blake, as a brand director, what's like the ultimate brand for you if you came in and rebranded something? Would it be butter or?
See, that's tough. I wouldn't want to rebrand anything that I absolutely love because I wouldn't want to mess it up.
That's a good point.
I'd probably want to fix a brand that's really bad. I'd have to think on that one. There's a couple of them that are pretty atrocious, but they're not coming to mind immediately. So, Kevin, you work on a lot of youth events. Like, give us some more about your current role. Like, tell us about CIY, what you guys are doing, how you're wrangling all these kids to Jesus to save their souls.
Well, so what we view ourselves as a parachurch organization. So we bring the programming, we bring the production, and we find locations, and then churches attend. So what we want to do is we just want to be the best champion of getting good youth events and good content in front of students and remove the distractions so that youth ministers and youth volunteers can ultimately get involved with their students. So that's what we want to do. We want to come alongside the church and champion her, because at the end of the day, we're nothing without her. So yeah, it's kind of what we do.
When I think about like the way that people develop and grow up, I really think peak time that I was going to get saved was in that youth time. And like truly, if I don't have the church I went to, the events we did, the summer camps, I don't know if I'm a Christian at this point. Like that was the perfect time for my type of personality to get saved. So I connect deeply to these kind of things. Like it's a bunch of chaos, but in all actuality, that's where these kids feel safe to operate and be vulnerable.
And what we fully believe is that we're creating flag in the sand moments for these youth that they can go back and look and say, here's a youth minister that really was involved in my life. Here's a moment in time, a glimpse. And sometimes it's not even like a huge deal. It's a real quick little blip of time that they say, oh, I was jumping in oatmeal, and that's when they decide that's when, they're going to give their life to Christ, and they can call back to that and say, oh, Rob was there with me. And I know that Rob loves Jesus because he was there with me in the oatmeal, So,
okay. Speaking of being in the oatmeal, every launch for 7th and 8th grade ministry at Fellowship, they do ice cream Olympics, where I kid you not, it's like an hour of ice cream getting thrown at you, sliding on slip and slides with ice cream, having to eat ice cream, having to dive into it. And I spent the whole time in the second year trying to avoid getting in the ice cream because it was awful.
Why?
And so at the very end, everyone else had done something and they needed someone to do the worst one. And I'm like, crap, I got to step up. I'm the only one left. So then I had to sit there as every 8th grader in my group came and dumped an entire thing of either ice cream, whipped cream, chocolate sauce, whatever. I just fully embraced it. I was in a banana, by the way.
A banana?
I was in a banana suit. It was awful. But yeah, like those are those moments, though, ironically, that'll anchor in kids' minds. So
absolutely.
Okay, and I'm curious, we've had so many guests on that talk about moments when they were in middle or high school and they're at events, it sounds like, like a CIY event, and where they're looking at front of house, they're looking at lights and they're thinking like, Oh, that's interesting. Like it's, there's these salvation moments or these, flag in the sand for their relationship with Christ, but it also seems like there's this flag in the sand moments for like production, like just
The
trigger their
important stuff,
heart.
production.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of those where kids come up and they're like, "Ooh, like tell me more about this"?
Absolutely. So we have a couple of different people that come up to us, as always, in every situation like this. Is we got the song requests, we've got the people that are just hype looking for the band because Lord knows that they are closer to Jesus because they're on stage, and then
Obviously.
and then
I mean, technically,
right, yeah, technically they're 4 feet taller. But at any rate, and then we have the last group that are like just so interested, and it's so fun to bring them along. And especially as I have been around for a while, I've learned youth pastors' names, and just they've come and just said, "Hey, I've got this kid. His name's Johnny. He loves this kind of stuff at church. Can you show him around?" And it's like that's one of those things that I love doing because it's like it's the next generation that we get to just kind of show and just kind of like, well, this is how we do this. This is how we do this, and it's kind of like that Wizard of Oz a little bit of like showing behind the curtain, but then also they're still just so enamored because there's so many lights and there's so many blinky things that are happening, and then it's like, oh, there's so much cable here. It's like, okay, yeah, it's messy, but we got to clean it up.
And how
So yeah,
often
I think it's awesome.
how often do those kind of connections, those little like site tours for those kids end up where, fast forward 2 years, 5 years, they're actually working at CIY in production?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I've ever tracked that metric or really tried to follow up. I would say that it's kind of there's been a few that have kind of trickled through, but I think it's kind of I don't know. I don't know if there's really data on that. I don't know of any personally that have kind of come all the way through, but I know that we have. I just don't know of a name off the top of my head that would say this is one that I toured and has come back to us. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's not our goal. Our goal is if they're interested in it to get plugged into the local church because we're just such a small blip of the summer and how they can serve. So, I mean, my goal always is to get them involved in the local church first, because that's how we even can look at them and say, okay, you guys have done some stuff in the local church, and then come back in a year or two when you're 18, 19. So I would say that there's a lot of people that get plugged into the church, and I don't know how many people actually turn around and come back to us as far as contractors go.
So
That's a weird metric.
Once they do end up coming over to you guys, what's it like developing these young production people and then sending them out into the world? It sounds like from talking with Dave, who's on staff with us here, that like you guys y'all almost are like a launch pad for a lot of really great production people who work with you guys and then go do big things. So like, what's it like working with those youths? What's it like, seeing them succeed later on, and how do you mentor them, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say we have people come in at all levels of experience and knowledge. We have guys that have gone to MXU Lives. We've got guys that have, worked in a church for years. We've got guys that have come to us that have toured before too. So it's kind of a smattering of who comes in. So what we do is and even then we always are trying to hone in on this training process. But really, what happens is we bring everybody into town before any event or any tour we do. We bring everybody in town for 2 weeks to 3 weeks of just like kind of intensive training on their rigs and kind of training them on what the CIY way is, as far as, when do we transition lights? When do we make sure mics are unmuted? How do we mute mics? So, and kind of those things. Do we go through scenes? Do we go through Q stacks? Like kind of just training them on how we do things. Not saying it's the end all be all way, but the other piece of it is we have it so that techs and even A1s and all those different guys that are traveling with us, we want to make it so that you can swap between trucks too, and it's not a total reset if we have to do that in midsummer. And with COVID and different sicknesses, even before COVID, it was one of those things where sometimes you got to switch on what gear you're running because X, Y, or Z happened. So it really is a kind of a training in what we do specifically and how it pertains to our events. And that's why I try to get people that have been plugged into a local church or in a college environment, or collegiate environment, just because they have a little bit more base that we can build on. So, and a lot of times it's like, okay, we're going to train you in the touring side, now that you kind of have some basics.
And so do you require like certain minimums for guys joining your team, or, sometimes you get in like really green techs and you're like, well, you're going to be thrown to the fire and mistakes will happen.
It's a little bit of both. So we do several interviews before we hire you on, and kind of that is it's a bit of a vetting process as well. We'll reach out to anybody that you've referenced as like technical, somebody that's proving that you have a technical background. So any of your references that are in that genre, we kind of really reach out to and say, okay, we don't know this person at all. We don't know this school at all. Like if the more we don't know you, the more we kind of vet that a little bit. So I think it's kind of one of those things that we love to teach. We love to teach and we love to train up people. And sometimes to our own detriment, we hire really green people. But sometimes we'll pair those up. If it's somebody that's really, really green, we'll say, okay, let's find somebody else that we can pair up with this person to help teach them and help them learn through the summer or through even some of our spring tours.
So then when you're taking these really green Padawans under your wing, Master Jedi here with the beard, do you have any moments where they cause a disaster and suddenly you have to go save them? Is Anakin saving Ahsoka very often? Like what's going on with those? Do you have any funny moments you can tell us? We won't say any names. Don't want to embarrass anybody.
Right. We won't say any names. I mean, here's the thing is we travel, we set up and we tear down sometimes every single week. So we do depending on what tour you're on 7-8 weeks of tour sometimes for the summer. And so we have all sorts of smatterings of things that get phone calls late at night of, oh man, this crashed. And then it turns out that you just had the Ethernet cable plugged in the wrong port. So there's those. And then we have ones where somebody decides that they know how to take apart truss better than someone else. And they smash out the pins and it wasn't supported. And we have towers that kind of come down a little bit. And I've seen, 13 stitches that had to be put in. I've seen cracked skulls because a piece of truss like tilted over. So, yeah. And then, sometimes you are unloading semis. So you have, summoner lifts that fall off of forklifts. And so a lot of them are preventable. It just is a matter of like part of having younger, greener staff is you got to really coach them to say like, hey, please pay attention to what you're doing. And even then, sometimes the most pleading you can do of like, make sure you know what you're doing before you do it, sometimes still happens. I would say all those things didn't happen in one summer, just to be clear. And we really have maybe one incident every couple years. So it's really, most things are minor. It's just, we really try to teach and preach safety first. And then second, we want to get the rig up. So
and are most of those things preventable if they just, go slower, follow the checklist? Is it going too fast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of it's going too fast. Some of it's thinking that they're doing the steps in the right order. So yes, going back to following that checklist. And some of it is just, just rushing through because, and I will say when we're loading out, it's, you got to get it done and you got to get it on that truck. You have a dock time, you have all these different pressures. So I think just getting in a hurry and losing track of what portion of the loadout you're in is always kind of a flaw in some of our design of how we do it. So.
And I think guys that are in the church world that have never been on the touring side of things, great integration companies come and they build the system out. They design it, they install it, like Ethernet cables are in the right ports because they check the system. Right. But it's completely different world that you're working in. Do you feel like, half the time you're a production guy, half the time you're almost like a construction guy or a UPS driver of, you've got to switch hats of like, okay, tear this all down, put it back in the boxes and get it on the truck. Like, how does that, shift between mindsets work?
Yeah. And I'd say most of us are we build it out very technically sound to begin with. And as far as like, we have a lot of equipment that is very modular anyway. So it doesn't feel as like integrator, but it is kind of one of those things where I would say, more than just production manager, we take a role of a technical director in a lot of ways of like, okay, let's troubleshoot this together. And so honestly, some of the bigger things we do in some of the training is sometimes we'll sabotage your rig and then you have to figure out what's wrong with it. Because it's like, it's a lot of these guys that come out of churches, right? You don't have to run the DMX cable. Just like you said, you don't have to set up the rig. You just kind of show up and it's already kind of rolling and you're just going to program your few looks for lighting, or you're going to you're going to EQ different audio segments. So.
And I know, so I think there are a couple moments in the church production world where they almost cross into that touring style of things, which is Christmas and Easter.
Yep.
So oftentimes, like there are, normally there's 1 or 2 services Sunday morning, and then sometimes it's like, okay, we have 17 services for Christmas pushed into a week, and it's like crazy chaos, load in, load out, all this stuff.
It's the 25 services of Christmas.
Yeah. So have you been in that church production world where like Christmas is crazy, and then how did that experience translate to the touring world now?
Yeah. So luckily I've not spent a ton of time I'm in the church Christmas world because those are long hours. So I pat all of the technical directors, production managers, all the different guys that work in churches. Well done. Hang in there throughout Christmas and Easter, all those long holidays. I know that those are long hours, but I've been there when points aren't delivered on time and you got to hurry up and figure out a solution there, or you do the church production where it's part of the Christmas service where we're gonna have a reveal, and it's gonna be baby Jesus in the manger, live nativity, and then it's kind of been cool to transition now to doing support for churches. So we rent out equipment to churches for Advent. We rent out churches. There's a journey through Bethlehem that's happening that they're picking up gear in a couple weeks. So it's been really cool. As far as disasters specifically, man, I've seen mics miss and it just squeals because they've done this huge setup of like, okay, we got an orchestra for Christmas Eve service. It's going to be awesome. And it's just, you just get all these swells and squeaks, and it's just like, oh, you guys could have done this so good. But I know they've worked hard, so it's hard to be judgmental there. The cool thing is when I was a technical director at the church, I was actually very blessed that we took like that week off. So Christmas was like, spend it with your family, and we gave them the ability to do it like church in a box, basically, and invite your neighbors in to your home. But I was part of a church plant, so it wasn't cool. So it was actually really fun to do that kind of stuff.
That sounds wonderful. I feel like every tech director
right?
Listening right now is like, oh, I'm going to tell my pastor, let's do that.
Yeah, let's send church in a box to all of the congregates. Hey, you don't like how the sound is? Turn it down on your remote. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I
do have one Christmas story.
Give it to us. Give it to us.
It's one of me. It's not a technical thing. But so back to my 5 truths and a lie. Last time I was clean shaven, I made the joke that I can shave my head and not my beard, and it still works. So I shaved my head right before Christmas, and then I had wigs because I just think they're hilarious. So I wore a wig to my grandmother's Lutheran church, and we did a candle lighting service, and it's me in front of, I'm sitting like 3 seats down from my grandmother and great grandmother, and they are just they're doing the proper things of being reverent and everything like that, and I'm in there wearing a wig. So we start singing and we start doing the candlelight where it's passing down the row. All my cousins and extended family are behind me, and so I make the funny joke. I take my wig off because I don't want it to catch fire. And they die laughing in the back of this Lutheran church. It's regal, man. We got pipe organs up front, really getting it. The Star of David's spinning because we're really getting it now in this worship service. And I just take my wig off and they die laughing. And my grandmother says nothing to me because I am the favorite. And she looks back at them and gets onto them because they're laughing. And it was awesome. So it's not a Christmas disaster. It's just one of my favorite Christmas moments in a church service.
Blake, do you go to the Christmas Eve service at Fellowship? Like candlelight service, they pass the candles around.
I don't think I do. I try to travel for Christmas.
Kevin, I mean, this just totally reminds me of like 3 years ago or so. My family's in the service, and then after, like some young girl's playing with her candle, and her hair catches on fire.
Absolutely.
And like 5 people just run over and like throw a sweater over her head. Like it didn't get much of her hair, but it sure smelled. Like you could smell like burnt hair is the worst. But
so sweaters, think about all the things you wear to Christmas service. You're wearing a lot of hairspray, you're wearing sweaters, you're wearing all these different things that like, they're all super flammable. So I've seen it too. That's what was so funny about it, is because I did it because I've seen that before. And I'm like, okay, I gotta play this up a little bit. It was so good.
I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't heard and if someone has, send this story to us of a church actually catching fire from something like this. Because now that you described it, I'm like, oh gosh, this is rife with.
I bet if we just like Google like candlelit service gone wrong, we'll have plenty of footage.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, that's also like Woodstock 99. So,
oh man, that's a whole different podcast episode. Blake, have you seen that documentary?
I have not.
You should. It's
I was there though.
Kind of like the Fire Festival, so to speak. Like they put on this, Woodstock 99, and just it erupted into absolute chaos, and they started to burn the place down. Like,
so the only thing that was different from Fire than this one is they actually did it with all the bands playing. Like that's a little bit different but they at the end of it, they just it's a good watch.
It was
it's maybe not the most wholesome, but it's good, man.
Yeah, Limp Bizkit basically like incited a riot and told people like tear everything down, and they started to do it.
I gotta tell you, when humans get together in large groups, they do bad things.
100%.
I understand why God was like, Tower of Babel, nope, not doing this stuff. Okay, so speaking of humans getting together and doing really bad things, I hear there was.
Where are you going with this, Blake?
I hear there was. Well, I'm not talking about my weekend last weekend. I hear there was a moment where you were driving a truck full of production gear, and you almost died. So tell us that story. I mean, we're assuming you lived, unless we're speaking to your ghost. But again, this is Christmas, not Halloween. So
there you go. So we were driving, and so part of our touring is, I mean, we load people up in vans and all sorts of things. Most of our gear travels by semi, so that's kind of nice now. But we were cruising in to California. We're coming in on the 5, where it's like 35 lanes wide, or
give us the breakdown. How big is this truck? How many people are in it?
So it's a Sprinter van. So it's a high top Sprinter van. I mean, it seats 12 with a lot of cargo in the back. And I think this time we had, we had a bunch of those like Zorby, like, those cool things that everybody said was very youth intentional, like the big bean bags, like love sacks or whatever. We were actually delivering them to a church in California because we bought a bunch, and we were deciding we are youth intentional, but we don't need that many bean bags in our office. So we had them packed full in the back of this Sprinter van, and then we had a bunch of people in this van. So we were rolling deep, and we were coming into like LA, and the highway is just massive. I mean, it's 100 lanes wide, just ridiculous. And all of a sudden we just hear a loud just pop, and we lost a tire. It was crazy loud. And so I just like get it off. But at this point, we're like in the middle of the highway. Like, so it's 7 lanes to your right, it's 3 lanes to your left. And so it's like, well, the only option we have is to go to like the shoulder on the fast lane side.
Oh.
And so it was wide, but it was still shoulder on the fast lane side. So we pull all the way over to which is only a couple lanes because we were close enough. We pull over to the shoulder of the left of the side of the fast lane side, and like trucks whizzing by us, man. Like it was semis and everything whizzing by. And so it's like we only have what's in the Sprinter van. So it's like, okay, we have the little bottle jack that like looks like, if you're standing still, it'll fall over. So we get that, and the tire's tucked up underneath. So literally we're doing all these things. We're getting it all set up, and I take the tire off of the side of the wheel, and we're lowering the tire down off of the rail. And I literally like have to crawl underneath the van to grab it. And as I'm grabbing it and pulling it out, I'm like seconds away from getting out from underneath the trailer, and this truck is barreling down like right next to us. And so they literally like don't sideswipe us, but it's like you feel the wind, and then there's another truck coming the other way, and literally the van, you could just see the van like teeter-totter, and it falls off the jack right as I'm pulling the tire out from underneath the van. It was the closest thing to death I feel like I've ever been. And again, I was a paid tree climber for a little while. It was super scary. So from that point on, I was a little bit shaken. And I literally said to a couple of our like operations director and a couple of people, I'm like, hey, for the future, I'm going to go ahead and just say that we need to just call AAA or roadside service for anything like this. Because if that was not me, I don't know, like, it could have been an intern. It could have been one of our green event staff. And, I can pull Tyler out of there pretty fast, and I didn't see the truck coming. So had I been dilly-dallying underneath that truck, I don't know if I would be on the podcast today. It was that was a really close.
Blake,
really
I'm going to need to change my shorts because I'm so scared by that story.
This
it's
is
real though.
terrifying.
Like that's the thing, is like you can feel the elements of what that would be like, because everybody's had something where you've been on the side of the road and you feel the cars flying by, or when you're driving, in a 2-lane road and you feel the air. It was scary.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I can't get that close to death in this story that I've already told, but like I broke down on a gear run at like 11:30 at night in Orlando, Florida, and some of the back of my tire has exploded, and I'm on the side of the road in between 2 lanes, like the 4 lanes on the left and then the on-ramp to the right. And every time a car would go by in the hour I was waiting to get it fixed, I mean, it would rock the van to the point that I was looking and I was like, do I play Frogger and try to run through these lanes to get off the highway and get up to that McDonald's? It's scary.
Did you get under the van to change the tire, Blake?
I got into the van for safety.
And did you fix it yourself, or what did you do, Blake?
Oh, I called a dude. Bruce showed up with a,
No. Who did you call?
Oh, I called you, and you basically were
Yes, you
like,
did.
I'm asleep. Leave me alone.
It was like midnight, dude. I was like, I'm trying to sleep here.
Owner of the company, my butt. So I praise the Lord for Bruce who fixed that tire. Okay, so if we were to
Okay, Blake, surprise game.
No.
I'm just messing. I thought it'd be hilarious if what if there was like a system to unpack off the truck, set up, tear back down, put it back on the truck, and it's you versus Kevin. Like, that'd be so funny.
Well, I do have some experience in jigsawing, but Kevin, sometimes we'll do like surprise quizzes. Thankfully, you and I have been spared this round. But one thing
Lucky.
I can't spare you from is the tech takeaway. So we like to wrap all our episodes up with something that would make any Church Tech Sundays better, whether this be technical, relational, spiritual, any of the O's. So what would you recommend?
I would say there's never time wasted on pre-production. So the more time that you can spend getting prepared for services, or even what I would say for us is we walk into churches sometimes and help them change over sets. And so anytime that you can do a little bit of planning ahead of time, that's always going to be time well spent. So, and I think even when we do our pre-production for summer and stuff like that, we always feel like we could do more and we could do more, we could do more. Because here's the thing is, once people are there, once, pastor's there with notes, once, band's there, needs tweaks, or the in-ears are not working correctly this morning, or whatever it may be, you don't get that time back. So you need to plan that buffer, and you need to plan that pre-production as early as you can, so that anytime that you have Sunday morning is either time to chill, or it's time that you can use to fix problems. So I think for me, it's proper pre-production solves and makes the overall production much, much better. So that's kind of my takeaway.
I love that. I like to hold 2 quotes in tension of like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. But also,
and who said that?
Mike Tyson.
Yes.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Like, I almost feel like you have to plan as much as you can so you take less punches in the face, and that when you like, hopefully you've planned enough that when stuff does go awry, you're more prepared for it. It's a weird thing to hold like in tension between the two.
Blake, do you
I
realize
like when
that
people call me out
What?
on that piece of it? Sorry, I like when people call me out on the piece of we'll just wait to do that later. I like when people call me out on that, because it's like, no, we need to solve it now. Because if we wait till later, there's not really a later.
You're looking at it right here. I'm like, Toby, problem. And Toby's like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I was going to say, Blake, do you feel like you're a bit of a production director because you prep and plan our podcasts ahead of time? And is there anybody else in the podcast world more prepared for these productions than you ahead of time?
I will joke, or I'll tell you, many guests say when they get our outlines that we're the most prepared podcast they've ever been on. So I was going to...
Oh, I love it.
I know. You should pat yourself on the back.
I think
my
it's
gosh.
great.
This is my first attaboy. Is this a reverse firing on the yearly like total of fire counts?
No,
Do I get
I'm
to
still going
take
to fire
one
you.
off?
But
Well,
I know.
wait, hang on. Does that count?
I'm just letting you know for later.
All right. I was spared this round. I'll take it. Well, Kevin, dude, we really appreciate you coming on, man. You got a lot of crazy stories. You got a lot of, moments where you almost died. So that's terrifying, but great content. I'll also admit that when you were telling your story on the wig, I was, selfishly hoping the wig was going to catch on fire.
I know,
it
right?
Could make good content. Anyways, though,
getting in trouble.
If anyone wants to, catch on the fire of Kevin, though, where do they find you? What would you like to plug?
Oh, I don't like to plug myself.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm on socials. My wife's on social. She does a better job than I do. Just reach out to CIY if you are interested in touring with us, if you have gear that you need or whatever. So those will be the few plugs that I'd say. So at K Binks, at Becca Behnke, that's what we do.
Your wife's getting a message going, hey, I really would love to borrow Kevin's wig and chainsaw for Halloween.
Exactly.
Or to commit a murder.
Well, she actually is way more famous than I am. So that's the truth.
Aren't most of our wives?
Well,
hey, it's better that way too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, man, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
So, Blake, we're in Christmas season, but you know what other season we're still in as well?
Fantasy football. Ba, ba, da, ba.
And you and I are going head-to-head this week, aren't we?
And it's your first year, and you're actually 6-3 as of this recording, which is pretty darn impressive.
And we are tied, aren't we?
Yes, the winner of this could very well be the top seed in the league.
Mm-hmm. How embarrassed would you be to lose to a first-year just newbie with fantasy football?
I would be devastated. I don't pretend to know anything about tech, but I know every single thing about fantasy football.
I mean, what do you think the chances are of you actually winning the league at this point?
Well, I think actually your chances are 11% of winning, which is why we also have a code for that. It's called We should make a new one. And Toby beats Blake. It's code podcast for 11% off. So use code podcast for 11% off anything at churchgear.com, even if it's $50,000. We don't have anything for $50,000.